is Monday. It is 8:30, which means it is time for Conversations with Teresa. Thank you guys so much for coming on. As always, I am thoroughly excited to have you on, to have you participate, but to have us all grow in this thing that we go through called, whether it's perimenopause, menopause, or postmenopause, we got some feelings and we got some things to talk about. And so tonight, as always, super, super excited, thrilled to death to be able to introduce to you a great friend of mine, Holly, who sort of a recent friendship, maybe like within the last year, we got a chance to meet. And, like you meet people, you have these conversations and they're just automatically deep. They're, not forced deep. They're just like meaningful and rich conversations. And that's one of the things that Holly is able to bring to the table. So Holly, thank you so much for being on. I appreciate you so much. And I can't wait to learn more. Like, I purposely asked you some questions, didn't ask you all the questions, because I love how things kind of unfold, right? Just naturally. But let me tell you guys why I asked Holly to come on. All right. So we're just in conversation and, we probably talked about 10 different things or whatever. But Holly has been the first person who told me I went on hormone replacement therapy and it changed my life. And her excitement and her enthusiasm, and she went on to tell me some other things that I'll let her talk about, but it was really great. And in our conversations, one of the things that I mentioned to Holly was that I don't think I'm sure you're not the only person that I know who has decided this is what I'm going to do. This is what makes sense to me. But you were the first person who said it out loud. And I appreciate that so very much. And I just look forward to, again, knowing more, but knowing more about you. Like, there are things that I know about HRT and, different things. But even in our conversation just before we got on, you said something, I'll tell you in a minute, but you said something. I'm like, oh, I didn't know that part of it. So it's really, really great. And I'm excited, again, not only for me, for our relationship to deepen, but really the reason why I talk about this is because there are so many questions that people have. There are so many conversations that have not happened and that need to happen. And my hope, my goal, my dream is that perimenopause, menopause, all the different things that have to do with us become normal and natural conversation so that it's not weird. It's not crazy. We don't feel alone. We don't feel shame. We don't feel guilt. We are who we are. And so I think that you are one of the great people to be able to bring this about. So, I know I just said a lot. So Holly, if you wouldn't mind, would you just, walk us through, let us know, how has your journey been through peri, through menopause, through postmenopause, and then, take us through your decision, how you got introduced to HRT and what's been different.
Thanks, Teresa. So I was a very late mom. It was a second marriage, and neither of us had been able to have a child in our first marriage. And we got together when we were 40, and we didn't want to just have a baby before we had lived together for a while. And I didn't have to go through any kind of fancy stuff. I got pregnant with our son at 43. We were both 43. And so I think I had kind of a funny perimenopause because I nursed him for 2 years. So then I was 45. I was working a lot as a real estate agent and garden designer. And and had good energy. And so when the perimenopause stuff started, it probably started when I was like 49 or 50. And I don't think I even identified it as that. But it also was kind of bizarre because, it was so mushed together from when I had been pregnant and had a kid. And it's not the way it's supposed to go. I totally recommend the other way, doing it earlier. But anyway, I for someone who's gregarious the way you are and has a lot of friends, and I'm not nervous about talking about stuff in the right company, I just was suffering alone. And I think that a big part of the reason that I was that my dad was dying in Connecticut, and my sister and I were going back and forth trying to help my mom, and she was refusing to get someone to come in and help, and they were falling down, and so there was, there was all this really hard stuff like that going on.
Okay.
And my then husband, who's an architect, was out of work for a while, so I felt a lot more pressure to be the one earning for the whole family. And so when I started having disrupted sleep, and I started having mood swings, and I started crying more often, and I just started having all these different symptoms, and I had never felt like that before, and I didn't put it together. And I think because I was zooming to Connecticut and then back and then working and taking care of my kid, I guess maybe it was at a time where I didn't have as much time as usual, where I would be talking to my girlfriends. Yeah.
Okay.
And so, but I had a fantastic doctor. So and a legend, really, who just retired recently. And I
just retired. That means we can't go to him. Okay.
No, but he has a clinic of about 7 doctors in Arlington, and I hope some of them are still available to take patients, because once you're in, if you need to see somebody right away because you have strep throat or you have a UTI or something like that, if your doctor's not available, they'll say blah, blah, blah is available. And I've seen every single doctor, and a lot of them are women. I've seen every single doctor in the group.
I love it.
Yeah. They also have a walk-in, which is unbelievable. So
okay.
He's really funny. He's South African, and he's a jazz musician, and he's a riot. And so he said, so tell me a little bit about what's going on. And I told him for a few minutes, and he said, I'm going to do a blood test on you to be sure, but I think you just plummeted, from a pretty gentle perimenopause,
wow.
The last time he had checked my blood, I was just kind of having a gradual switch. And then, when he got the blood test back, he was like,
wow. So it's a he, correct?
Yes.
Your doctor. So he suspected that you were going through this transition. So had done a blood test before, I'm assuming, checking.
He had been my doctor for a really long time.
Okay.
And my OBGYN and he were best friends, and my OBGYN worked with midwives. And so there was a lot of intercommunication.
Okay.
And Stanley was a really beloved doctor and had been a gynecologist at the beginning of his career and switched to being a PCP. And so he just had so many women coming into his office going, I'm losing my mind, I can't sleep. I'm soaking the sheets. So I mean, he had been a doctor for 50 years. I mean, he basically just looked at me and said, "Oy vey."
Okay.
And he was always really proactive. So
that's awesome.
I felt super lucky to be in his care and in my gynecologist's care.
You were super lucky.
You know, the other thing he said that was really funny, he's like, because he was part of my dance community. He's like, you hippie Cambridge women, you think you're going to make some nettle tea and everything's just going to be Ari.
Okay.
And then he said, 6 months later, you come crawling into my office going, I'm losing my mind.
Oh, gosh.
So he was not a real big pharma guy. He was very conservative about dispensing medication. So I really trusted him that way. And so he said, I think you're a really good candidate for HIT. You know, you're under the gun. You're working like 60 hours a week. You know, your dad's sick. And he said, and I said, but isn't it dangerous? Like, doesn't it give you cancer or something like that? And he said, there's so much bad information out there about it. He said, what is true is if you've had breast cancer, it's not safe for you to do this because it's something about the estrogen. So he said,
so Holly, for just a second, you had come off it froze a little bit. So just to make sure that I understood you correctly, he suggested hormone replacement therapy. Okay, so he suggested HRT. You said, doesn't it cause breast cancer? And then he said there was a lot of misinformation.
It's women with breast cancer who can't do it, but he said millions of women do it and find tremendous relief from it. And he said, I've studied. What I loved about him was he was a researcher, so he had studied and seen that as long as it was under 5 years using this basic HRT, it wasn't bioidentical, vegetable based, was just regular old HRT. He said there was no danger for someone like me. And he said, this works like a charm for some people, and other people we have to tweak it, and then some women find it doesn't really help that much. And that was what Judy Norsegian said to me at dinner, my resident women's health guru. She said, it doesn't work exactly the same way for everybody. And people's hormonal cycles don't cycle the same way. Some people go through perimenopause for what seems like forever, for like 7 years or 8 years. I think I just went through it for like 2. I never had sweats in the daytime, thank God, because my friend did. She used to have to bring like 3 changes of clothing to work. She was like she jumped in a swimming pool. I was glad that it happened in my bed. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so some of those symptoms that you talked about, so you didn't have the daytime sweats, but it was the nighttime sweats. What were the other specific things that you were?
Mood swings, really suddenly really emotional, and would be talking and working something out with my husband, which was usually pretty even, and I just burst into tears, or let me see what other things on here.
Now, do you remember what your mood swings?
Before I went on them, when I came into his office, I said, Stanley, I think I may be having a nervous breakdown. I think I may be going crazy.
Okay. Yeah.
And he's like, well, what makes you think that? And I talked to him for a little while, and he goes, no. You're deep in it, girl.
Okay. All right.
And it was such a relief.
That's, I tell you. Okay. So he says HRT, hormone replacement therapy, this is the way to go because we've done this lab work. So there is a test. There is some test that you can take. Blood test, right. So
and I had one when I was in gentle perimenopause. And then when I came in and was like, oh my gosh, I'm I'm
So
certifiable.
what is this gentle perimenopause? What is that?
Well, what he meant was that compared to a lot of women, mine was relatively short and uneventful. It was rather gentle, and then
Okay.
because the I don't really even still totally understand about what's up and what's down with these hormones. But anyway, from the first blood test, whatever was leaving slowly, and
Estrogen level, you mean?
happening slowly, and I was functional. And then Daddy got, within 6 months of dying, he got much sicker. My mom was, really in bad shape, and they were refusing to get help, and we were going down there, and it was just super hard. And I think that's something that, I guess, so I don't forget to say it later, you and I have talked about this. I think that when women go through this and they don't have a health provider who is really in their corner and knowledgeable, and also they don't have access to something like womenlivingbetter.org so they can do their own research, and that by these amazing women who put it together, it's a website. You just drew a complete freaking blank. You're just in the dark so much of the time. So so he told me, I didn't even really know. I was pretty stressed anyway, that I was having a nice meander through perimenopause. And then, I came back into his office when I said, I'm going off my rocker. This is like, Kevin doesn't know what to do. Like 1 minute I'm talking to him over dinner, and the next minute I'm crying. And so he tested me again. He said, your estrogen just plummeted. And he attributed it to all the hard emotional stuff that was going on.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things I just want to make sure that our audience understands. I've talked about it before, but that estrogen that we've just pretty much taken for granted all of our lives, because it's been there. It's what our body produces. We don't have to do anything. It's just there. And it does so much for us. It almost touches almost every organ, every that happens in our body. And so then when it starts to decrease or plummet, right? That's what we're feeling. Those are the things that is making us feel like we are going crazy, or that our joints, our body hurts, or that our cramps are so much more intense. And for me, like, my migraines were unbelievable. My eyesight changed. So many different things.
Yeah. And so I think that's one of the reasons why I've been thinking about it a lot, why women who have close women friends also say that they just didn't know what was going on.
Right.
I think it's because the symptoms can be so disparate and on again, off again. And I really felt like that with perimenopause. It's like, what is happening now? It's like, there's no map for this.
Right.
So I think that maybe one of the reasons why women don't talk to each other in a more in-depth, helpful way, even when they have great friends, even when they have sisters sometimes, is because other stuff is going on in their lives, and they're not connecting the dots with these various things that are happening. And it takes a really, really good, experienced healthcare
provider. Hold on 1 second, Holly.
To clue you in. And if you don't have one, fire the one you have and find one.
Our connection. Hold on for 1 second, Holly. Our connection. Okay. Sorry.
I'm a strong believer that if you don't feel like your doctor or your healthcare advisor is doing doing right by you, get it, like, fire them and find, talk to everyone you know and read and find one. And it's not easy, but there's something empowering. There's something empowering about being able to say, this person doesn't get me. They're not. It's like when you were saying to me that your doctor, you went complaining, that your vaginal walls hurt.
So many things.
And what? And they.
No, I was like, there were so many things, right?
No, but I remember when I was telling you about mine that when that was happening, you got some kind of answer like, oh, that just happens to women when they're getting older or something, or when they're going through the change, right? She didn't say, oh, your vaginal lining is thinning. That's why that's happening. And there's things that you can do for that.
Right. And so for those who may not have heard everything that Holly just said, unfortunately, our connection is a little challenging. It was a conversation that Holly and I was having, and we talked about just the whether it was the vaginal dryness or just that painful sex. It was tough, and so
I'm talking about the painful sex because it's really painful.
Yeah, it can be very painful. And so in that conversation, I thought, did I have a yeast infection? Did I have something else that, all these different things that I have to assume because I kept going to the doctor and they were like, no, there's nothing wrong. The labs are coming back fine. There's nothing wrong. And so I didn't know, like all of our lives, we think that the doctors are the smartest people on earth, right? That's why they become doctors. And so they can tell us what to do. So we didn't know to question, right? We didn't know to question. And then we didn't. And so I was just like, maybe it's me. Then you start thinking, am I making this up? Am I going crazy? Like all of these different things. And here's another example of just different experiences. So I just wanted to make sure that people understood that with your doctor, get really comfortable asking the questions. And if you don't like the answer, it's not just because you don't like the answer. If they tell you to exercise and you don't like that answer, we're not talking about that.
You're not getting anywhere.
We're not just talking about that, but we're talking about, okay, no, there's something else. There's got to be something else, because if they can't give you a why is this happening? Okay, so this is harder or this is painful, but tell me why it would be painful. What are all the reasons why it would be painful? And let's, take out the things that absolutely are not, and then let's take a look at what they are.
Just to be clear, when this happened to me, like mid lovemaking, I screamed and felt like a red hot needle was going through the wall of my vagina. And I went to my gynecologist, and I said that to him, and he said, "Oh, your vaginal walls are thinning. Like, we can do something about that. We can do something safe about that.
Do something about that." I love that. We can do something. Not you go figure it out. Not just me, but the whole we can do something about that. We don't have to suffer in silence. We don't have to suffer at all, silent or loud. And that's a big key that I know for me, I was not always not necessarily taught it, but I guess I wasn't taught it. I wasn't taught to question my doctor. I wasn't taught that stuff. But man, oh man, life happens and it's just like, we're not doing this anymore. So again, you're incredibly fortunate to have had a doctor who's been so proactive about that.
I was fortunate because I was very unfortunate in my youth. I had a terrible, terrible compound fracture of my hand in Vermont, and I was alone and I was in shock, and it took a while for me to get to somebody to get to a hospital. And I was really mistreated by the young I don't know if he was a resident or had just become an orthopedic surgeon, but
Okay.
his mistakes put me through years of pain. And I just decided that, and he was like Dr. Kildare. I mean, you wouldn't even know who that is, but back when I was young, he was this really sexy doctor on television. He just thought he was the hottest thing ever. And would, I didn't feel like I had any space to question what he was doing, except that he was causing me a lot of pain.
Wow.
And that was the beginning of my saying, no, not acceptable.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I could see that. I could see that.
We have to stand up for ourselves, and when something's going on that's shaking us up so much that we don't know whether we're going to have the presence of mind to ask the questions, that's where
Right.
that's like my friend Susan she comes with a notebook and she takes notes, and sometimes she asks questions. Like when I had cancer, she did that.
Okay.
Not breast cancer, and it's like taking power over our medical care.
And that's so important. It's so important at every stage, right? But I think it's not a but. And I think we're learning more and more how to do it. Just as women, I think about my mom, who just grew up in a time where, as a Black woman, there wasn't a whole lot of asking questions and getting answers. The respect wasn't there, and so you just kind of had to take what came.
Yeah, my mom too. I mean, she. Oh, you just froze.
Yep.
I remember my mother told me that they brought me to her. I guess she was still a little knocked out. They brought me to her, and my feet were in casts. I was her first child, and she burst out crying and thought that I had clubbed feet. And they had like taken me away and broken my feet and put them in casts.
What?
Without even telling or asking my parents.
Oh my gosh.
It was in the 50s. So there's a lot of arrogance.
Right. Oh my gosh. Yeah, there's a lot. But I think now, with so much that we learn and have gone through, someone had said it. I watched the show, the Oprah Winfrey show, where Mary Claire Haver and Halle Berry were on, and they were talking, and I can't remember exactly who said it, but they said our generation is the last generation who will not know about this, who will not know that they can ask questions, who will not know that, that perimenopause even exists, right? So I know, and I've said this before, perimenopause is a fairly new term for me. Only like in the last 2.5 years, I've heard about menopause and just heard about, you get really hot and your period stops. That was kind of the education that I got around it.
And the thing is that the if we women feel like we were pretty clueless, weren't taught, weren't told, the men are even more so. Like our mutual good friend Gary was saying to me when we were leaving your house after that conversation, he's like, I thought perimenopause lasted for like a month. And I thought menopause lasted for like a year. And I said, and you were married 3 times too. I said, did any of your marriages break up when the women were about 52 or 53?
And that's real. That's real talk right there. I don't know if they did, but that's a whole other subject for another time. But reality is that as women, it's not a coincidence that marriages tend to fall apart, issues tend to happen while we're going through this stage, because we are just, not like it's our fault, right? This is something that happens naturally to us. But because we don't know what's going on, we are not armed with the information to be able to walk through this gracefully. And so there are things that we don't understand. We could be a whole different person. And that, like you said, the partner on the other side could be like, what in the world? Like, not only are you going crazy, but, you know, our intimacy is gone. You know, there's so many issues that come up. And the fact that we typically are sandwiched in between, you know, taking care of our parents, taking care of their kids, our work situation could be just taken out. There's so many things that are happening that we don't, and then we're nurturers, right? And so we take care of everyone else before we take care of us. And so there's just a lot of stuff that's going on. And again, my hope, my goal to be talking about this and to be talking so candidly about it is that this is the last generation who will not know, who will not be armed with this information. And so that's why I just thought it was so important to have you on, especially given the fact that I remember talking to someone not too long ago, and I was suggesting, I was just like, you know, have you heard of, they were telling me about their symptoms, and I was like, have you heard of hormone replacement therapy? They were like, oh, you need to watch out. That causes breast cancer. And I was like, at that moment, I wasn't in a situation where I could have a long conversation, but I understood where they were coming from. I understood why they thought that. And so again, that's one of the reasons why I wanted you to be able to come on and just talk about what you felt, the difference. And I know we only have a few more minutes, but what was the difference?
I want to make sure that I say this because
yes,
I'm 72 and I wish I had started when I was 62. But 2 years ago, after talking to a friend I walk with, I asked my same gynecologist if I could go on bioidentical hormones since I'd already hit my time frame with the regular hormones. Bioidentical hormones are what women in Europe take, and they're vegetable based, but they are created from a blood test particularly for you, but they don't have to be made in a compounding pharmacy. When things are made in a compounding pharmacy, they're expensive, insurance doesn't cover it, and it's not FDA, it's not approved.
Okay.
But there are bioidentical hormones. I take them that I get as a prescription based on my blood tests from my doctor. And the estradiol, it's called estradiol, that's estrogen. It's a little clear sticky patch that you stick on your tummy Tuesdays and Fridays. You peel it off and put another one on. And at night you take progesterone in one little pill. And it's safe. And the reason that it's great to do it, Geneva, my housemate's been doing it for like 6 or 7 years. I wish I'd been doing it for 10. I just didn't. It can turn around early osteoporosis. It can stop it from happening if you have osteopenia. It keeps your skin from aging more. It keeps your hair from falling out. That's a wonderful thing that happens when you're around 70. And also when you're still sexually active at this age, it keeps your lining from hurting and getting thin.
Wow.
And insurance pays for it.
There you go.
And insurance pays for the other kind too. It just doesn't. It for HRT it does, and if you're a candidate for it, and then, but the compound pharmacies who make bioidentical, those you have to pay for, and it's expensive.
So tell me what you felt like. Let's say you started your therapy, and tell us like.
Are you talking about the one I'm taking now, or when I was younger?
Either one. You can tell me either one, right? So what, like you were feeling, you had all these different symptoms and things like that. How long did it take for it to activate in your body? How long did it take for you to start feeling different? And then what were some of those feelings? How did you feel differently?
Okay, so I have to do a qualifier that I've read this, that it's different from woman to woman.
Right, absolutely.
I happen to be somebody who responds to everything quickly.
Okay, all right. Appreciate that.
You probably are too. We're fiery. Anyway, so I felt it, by about a month. In both cases, I felt better, and I just felt a lot more stable emotionally.
Okay.
I felt less stressed out at my job. Like I could take everybody else, handle my client's stress without it getting all over me.
Okay.
Not completely, but much better. And I think the night hot flashes totally stopped.
All right.
And yeah,
How was your energy?
Yeah, my energy was a lot better because I wasn't flipping around with the bedding, and then went, I'm hot, I'm cold, I'm hot, I'm cold. And Kevin
So you were
finally
sleeping.
my husband finally gave up and got his own little comforter, so he didn't have to keep having it.
Yes.
Yeah, and this time my hair's not falling out anymore, and I know because when I wash it and condition it and I go like this, I don't end up with this big scary wad of hair every time I wash my hair.
Wow. Yep.
And
That's real fun.
I think it's really cool that Geneva, my housemate, said that, she's not in danger of osteoporosis anymore after 5 years of taking it.
That's huge.
She's
And I mean,
73.
As you mentioned, that's one of the other things that, another segment, another time, but a lot of times we look at menopause, perimenopause, and we're like, okay, yes, the hot flashes, I don't want to have brain fog, and I don't want to, have this joint pain, but the things that are happening inside, right? It's that the weakening, the thinning of the bones. That's huge. The fact that what it does, the estrogen levels going down, what it does to our hearts. We're in unfortunately a better position to have a heart attack because of the lowering of estrogen. And so there's so many different things. And I say that all this, like, not a doctor. These are just the things that I've researched. These are the things that I've had conversation about. This is the stuff it's underneath, and it's scary. It can be scary until we know what we can do about it. And again, this is the very reason why we're talking about it. It's not just alleviating, the hot flashes, the inconveniences of needing, a couple of different shirts. Like, these are some real things that's happening.
And there's something really demoralizing and disrespectful when you go to a doctor and you're very clear about the way you're feeling. And it's just sort of, like you either get everybody's going through that, or,
yeah.
It's our bodies, it's our mental health, it's our life, it's our bones. And it's not a small thing.
No,
it's not to be treated in a trivializing way.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And so we won't do it. So to make sure that we don't do it.
That everybody, I don't, maybe you can put a thing across, but Judy Narcissian, who was one of the writers of Our Bodies Ourselves, she has worked for 50 years in women's health, nonprofits and stuff. And she said, womenlivingbetter.org is the best resource out there. It's completely created by women, and they are women who've been researching this stuff, and they've been college professors at, Brown and Yale, but
Wow.
and they're very approachable too. And
Okay.
so people should definitely check. I'm definitely going to check it out because
Right. Absolutely. So I think everyone can see down the bottom. And if you're just listening, it's womenlivingbetter.org website. Just to, as she was just saying, made for women by women, which just puts us already in a better place. Just like I'm hoping that this podcast just puts us in a better place, so that at the very least, if you can take just one thing from this, whatever is speaking to you more, and go to this website, do your research, talk to your doctor. And if your doctor's not listening, get another doctor. And I know it's not that easy right now, just because of the shortage of doctors and things like that. But we now have a lot more things on our side to say, yes, it's more, and it's not you. It's not, you're not going crazy. You're not just losing it. You don't have to, buy all these products to thicken your hair. It's estrogen. Let's get to the root of it. Okay. There's going to be a lot of
progesterone. You need the progesterone too.
Yes. Yes.
These women who created our Women Living Better, they have been doing a deep dive, as Judy said, into women's reproductive health for something like 40 years.
Thank you.
They are the trailblazers, and they're like, it's based on real science, and they're also really cool women. She knows all of them personally.
I love it. Well,
we'll get this one did this and this one did that.
Well, we're gonna have to get Judy on as well. So Judy, hopefully you're listening. I'm going to have you on as well and talking about this womenlivingbetter.org and the book. You said it was Our Bodies.
Well, she told me that it's kind of dated now because it came out in the late 60s or the 70s. But she told me that ourbodiesourselves.org is updated and worth a look. Okay. She thinks the other one is even better, but she said ourbodiesourselves.org is good too.
Excellent.
And we have conversations like this at the dinner table, like practically every night.
I love it.
All these women are showing up at our house, and
we got to talk about it. We do. Yeah. So listen, Holly, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on. And just sharing your story. It's been great. I think that I know that with our audience, people are in all different stages. Some people have not experienced anything. Some people are going through it, like myself. Some people are past it.
Some people go through it start in their 40s. I started in my early 50s.
Right.
That's another tricky thing about it.
There's so much to learn. So if our audience, if you guys have any questions, or if you're watching the replay and you have questions, you can absolutely you can put it in the chat. I'm sure there's a way even after the replay that you can ask questions. And I'm looking forward to continuing my conversation with Holly and meeting Judy and all these wonderful women that you're talking about. Going to womenlivingbetter.org. I will definitely check that out. And we are going to be so much better. We are not going to suffer anymore. We are going to do something about it. And
we're not alone. We're not alone.
We are not. We're not alone. So take this to somebody. If you got a friend, you're thinking, oh, I wish somebody would have heard this. Let them hear the replay. Sign up for the email list so you guys can get information. We have some super cool things that are coming about even in this month, the month of May. We have a program that's called Movement, Menopause and Movement. And so we're going to be talking again, having conversations like this, and we're going to be talking about how to move so that we are building more muscle and why that's important to be building more muscle and making sure that our bones are stronger and all of that great stuff. So again, not alone. Lots of information out there. I'm looking forward to helping to bring that to you, my non-doctor self. I myself is going through some stuff, and myself is doing some research. So we got this. We got this together. Holly, again, thank you so much for tuning in.
It was really fun.
Thank you so much for being on. Everyone else, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Please tell a friend. They don't have to be alone, and that we don't have to suffer in silence.
And they're not going crazy.
Okay.
Most of the time.
At least not with this, right? You might have some other things. I don't know. But we're just talking about perimenopause and the menopause part. So good stuff. Good stuff. Melanie, absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Melanie, for joining. And you are welcome. You guys have an amazing, amazing night. You guys take care. And we'll see you again next Monday on Conversations with Teresa.
Cool. Mm-hmm.